Hi, America Lukes. Happy to be here on Expanding Frontiers. I'm always grateful to see the people who are in chat, my fearless crew who are here every week with me. I want to thank Peter for promoting this show on social media. And I also want to thank Mario for his behind the scenes work and for all of you who are sharing information about this show and about Expanding Frontiers Research.org. As you've heard me talk about for the past several months, we've started a nonprofit that is dedicated to conducting ethical and important research in a variety of ways, in a variety of topics, which we're really looking forward to. You can go there and subscribe, and also you can read the wonderful blogs and research that we have done. I want to thank Jack Brewer and Barry Greenwood both for being involved in Expanding Frontiers. As the nonprofit begins to take shape, which is doing rather nicely, we are going to be reaching out to other people in the community, people that are experts on specific subject matters, to pull them in and really, in my opinion, make a difference in a lot of different ways. So I encourage you to go to expandingfrontiers.org and then pledge your donation, which is tax deductible. And I want to thank the lovely person who made a donation last week. That was wonderful. I also want to thank the supporters of UFO Classified. They are the people who help cover the costs for this show. And so all of you, thank you very much. You guys rock. Click subscribe. I never say that, but I'm saying it today. You've got to subscribe to Expanding Frontiers. And like I said, just get the word out there. I'm really passionate about what I do. I've been doing this show in one form or another for almost 10 years now. I have learned a lot about many different subjects, many different people in the subject. And as you've seen over the years, if you go back and look at my first shows and then now, you'll definitely see that I've completely done a 180 with regard to the way I think and feel about specific subjects. So it's really interesting. You've got all of that out there anyway, but I am really excited now to have my friend, my partner in Expanding Frontiers on the show, and he joined me. He was so gracious to join me last week when we couldn't get Greg Long on for the first little bit, and of course Jack comes to the rescue, and we get into this conversation that was it was getting pretty deep because we were talking about alleged UFO abductions and specific people, namely Bud Hopkins, who was a very big figure back in the 80s when he wrote several of his books, and then Whitley Strieber and, so on and so forth. And so I want to just say Amy, Simon, D.A. Gordon, nice to see you, D.A. Gordon, and Michael and Magnus and Renee. I've just got to go through the list. Shadowy Spectrums, Tina, Simon, Angels Are Life, Amy. Oh, yeah, Amy, I already said that. Amy, give Dinah a big kiss for me. And hopefully Lewis, my cat, won't be super lazy, and hopefully he'll come out. He's been a little naughty lately. I'm not quite sure. Maybe he's not eating enough. But Jack, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks. And hi, everybody. Hope you are enjoying a fun and safe St. Patty's Day. And happy St. Patty's Day to you, Erica.
Happy St. Patrick's Day to you. I almost forgot. And then I was like, okay, I think I can do a green light. I've got a green ring, so I am wearing green. A little shamrock. This is very exciting. Very festive, I know. Are you doing, are any of you guys doing anything fun for St. Patrick's Day, or is this the highlight of your evening? Because it is for me. And I think this is fun.
I headed to one of my favorite neighborhood pubs for a late lunch and wasn't even thinking about it being St. Patty's Day. I was like halfway there when it occurred to me, and they had a nice corned beef menu. So that was a treat. Yeah, a special menu for the holiday, and that was enjoyable. Yeah, caught a little basketball at lunchtime. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds fun. Well, you and your basketball and your football and your sports. And I want to just give a little shout out to the University of Utah women's basketball team. I have a client of mine who plays for the University of Utah women's basketball team, and she is absolutely amazing. They're totally killing it. And so I look forward to reporting on that, and I wish them the best of luck over the weekend.
Excellent. Outstanding.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So I actually like basketball. But I've got to ask you, Jack, have you ever been to Ireland?
I have never been to Ireland. I have never been outside the continental United States. No.
That, if we can ever find a way, maybe we need to do research in Ireland, but if you could ever find a way to go over there, that is probably one of my favorite places on the planet. I just love, like, the second you land, you just see these big billowy clouds and everything is so green and vivid, and it's just a remarkable experience. That was probably one of my favorite trips that I've ever been on.
Was Ireland on the schedule when you took the trip with, was Susan your friend's name?
Yes, you are
Yeah.
good.
That that you stayed at the castle? Was that on that trip?
Yep. Yeah, the good old haunted castle. Haunted.
Yeah, yeah. What other kind are there?
Well, I mean, none that are that much fun. I will say that in, like, on my bucket list, I am going to go to Transylvania and I'm going to stay in Vlad the Impaler's castle.
Oh my goodness.
I know,
What could go wrong?
pretty much everything, but it'll be good. I just love, I mean, it's so much fun to, have these stories that you hear in your mind for, forever. And you grew up hearing about all these tales, and Vlad the Impaler, who was, I mean, a real person, really not so nice, but it's so amazing to actually go there and meet the people and just kind of infiltrate the culture. And I love that. And I've heard that Romania is actually very well, pretty unspoiled, and quite a unique and beautiful place to travel.
I wouldn't know, but I'd imagine you're right. I would
Yeah,
not argue the point.
yeah, and I love this comment. Vlad the Impaler, good Christian, never did anything wrong. Well, we've got a few of those in history, don't we? And so,
That
UFO John Doe, thanks for keeping me posted. The Utes game starts in 30 minutes. And so I will definitely be watching that after. And it's so cool that I have people from Utah that are watching the show. I love that. This is really awesome. And people from all over the world. So very cool.
Yeah, you have them that stay up late and get up early and are here live with us every week. And if you don't catch the live show, you can, of course, find it on YouTube, or you can visit our website at expandingfrontiersresearch.org and check out the video page where you'll find past episodes as well as some other informational videos, like with Barry Greenwood. And Vanessa Valilko was kind enough to do a video with me, and a number of different topics and subjects that we've covered there in addition to the show, and intend to be continuing to add to that as well.
We will. And I think the video, and I want to thank you and Vanessa for the video that you did about domestic violence. As you know, for me, this is something that is really important. It's something I've lived through, I'm living through, and I'm still going through many more court cases. This has been almost 3 years now of continual court appearances and things, and it's been really a remarkable experience. It's been really, it's been the hardest thing I've ever gone through. And I am really happy that, throughout all of this, like, the bright spot for me was doing UFO Classified. And so you can go back and listen to some of my shows during that time frame and then get kind of a good idea, I think, from what I'm saying and my demeanor and things, what I was going through. And so that's a really interesting thing. And at the end of the day, when I make it out on the other side, which I hope will be sooner than later, I will definitely be doing work in my community to make sure that people that are victims of domestic abuse have access to resources, and not just given names and numbers to nonprofit organizations who are not providing any real in-house services to keep them safe. I'm also going to be trying to get some legislation passed that I really feel will be helpful. And I also really want people at the Salt Lake City Police Department to understand how much they have failed, and law enforcement officers in Utah, how much they have failed in protecting women and respecting women, in following laws and following their own, their own protocols. And that's going to be something that I will be really working on and am passionate on. And thanks to something that I experienced a few years back with the Salt Lake City School Board, I learned back then how to do grammar requests and utilize things that, Jack, you know very much about. We've talked about this before. And that process has been very liberating for me. And that's something that people need to understand, especially if they're in a situation like mine. You have these tools available for you where you can really make sure that people that are supposed to be keeping you safe and are supposed to be protecting the community are, you can, there are checks and balances there. And by doing a grammar request for certain documents, you can make sure that that happens. So I just want to state that this is a really important tool, not only for research if you're in a situation, but as you know, with FOIA requests, as Barry's talked about, as you've talked about in other areas of research.
Yes, yes, and if I might comment a little on the domestic violence issue for a moment, please.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Oftentimes, it's an uncomfortable topic to address. There's a lot of social issues that go with it. They can be uncomfortable, and so I want to make it as clear as I can that any way that I can be supportive or help you or others, I am all in on that and want to be helpful with it. That's why I suggested to invite Vanessa to talk with me on video. She has a degree in sociology and worked directly on domestic violence programs in Chicago. And we knew that she would be someone informed and a good source, emotionally intelligent as well, to discuss these things with. And by the way, she did a show last night with Luis Cayetano and the guys over at Invisible Night School that I highly recommend people check out. Or a couple nights ago, I think she actually did it live, that they addressed emotional trauma and the ways it manifests in fringe communities like the UFO subculture and things like that. But one of the things Vanessa addressed when she spoke with me about domestic violence for the Expanding Frontiers video was that when victims report their crimes and have the courage and the stamina that it takes to do this, oftentimes researchers came to know that as the second assault, what the victims may go through with the judicial system. And so, if there's any way I can help ease that pain and suffering, I certainly would want to be a part of that solution.
And I appreciate that. You've been very kind, and as had, Vanessa, and I'm really glad that I've got a nice support system. And like I say, I'm really grateful that I've been through the life experiences that I have, that have taught me specific ways to deal with things, and then have the tools to make sure that I am holding law enforcement accountable for not doing their job to enforce the three protective orders that I have: the military, the civilian, and the criminal protective order, and all of these things. And so it's been a real, the whole thing has been an absolute nightmare. I don't think I would never wish what I've gone through on anyone in my life. But the sad, unfortunate thing is there are many many people out there, men and women, who are in situations like this. And I will tell you, there are very few places that they can turn, even though places claim, that you can turn to us, here, and because you're getting funding from the government and things, and they're really, it's all about photo ops and luncheons and props on your resume and things. But never fear, because I'm here, and I'm actually going to, and I am working with some pretty incredible people to make a difference. Um, I've been very fortunate to have people in the media, specifically Nate Carlisle, who did a great 2 pieces on the National Guard, the Utah National Guard, and their lack of accountability, their just lack of not even understanding what was going on. And then not only that, but their need to protect their own. And again, there should be proper training for people in law enforcement, for people in the different branches of the military. That should be from the top down, and that should be, everyone should have that. There shouldn't be this kind of crap going on in a situation like that, and there's a lot of it. And so I'm obviously very fired up about this, because I really truly hope that if I can help one woman or man who is in this situation after everything that I've been through, then I will do what I need to do to make sure I can, because I'm not going to go through this and not make a difference. So there you have it.
Thank you. I don't think that anyone that's known you, has watched your show, has observed you from a distance, would doubt your stamina and determination. And it's inspiring, and it's absolute. It's a show of strength, and it's easy to respect and to want to support.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm looking forward to utilizing some of my resources and working with other victims. I have brought together many different people who have come into my life, who I found have experienced pretty horrific things on the domestic violence front, and not only that, have also been uh, shunned, brushed off by the Salt Lake City Police Department and other law enforcement agencies in Utah and in the military. So this is definitely something that will be addressed, and I will be doing that. So thank you for all of that. And now I can see that in chat we're talking about Skinwalker Ranch. When we're talking about some of the claims that you guys just, you get.
All roads.
I know we're going to Skinwalker. Okay, so apparently Travis Taylor did say that the activity, and I want to just go back up here because Steve was making some comments. Let's see, you've got to go up about the basin, and about the fact that Travis Taylor's claiming that a meteorite hit the basin, and that's why there is something that is paranormal taking place there. I actually know someone who's one of the head geologists in the state, and I have asked her this question, and no, there is no evidence that ever took place. And so, again, from my understanding, it's a rift basin. It's an interesting place. You can look up rift basins and things, and it is, from what I understand, that the crust is much thinner in these areas. But I mean, I would definitely look it up, and I would not believe anything that comes out of Travis Taylor's mouth, to be quite clear.
He has repeatedly shown himself to be an unreliable narrator. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's too bad. Again, he's, we've got to remember that he's a career actor. I mean, this is what he's done for 10 years. And so, of course, he's going to say things because he wants to keep his acting job. And then we can throw, a few things out there. And then we've been fortunate enough to be blessed with fourth season of the show. And so, now again, we'll see, guys shining lasers, Lord knows where. And
I think it's really important to keep in mind too that the burden is always on the claimant, the burden of proof. It's not Erica's responsibility or my responsibility or anyone else's responsibility to prove something is incorrect or not true. It's the person's responsibility that asserts it in the first place to offer enough adequate evidence available for public review to establish it as a fact. And what we often see happen is that these debates about one topic or another, from Bob Lazar to the MJ12 papers, for those of you that know the history enough to know what that is, and on, just get way out in the weeds. Like, I'm tempted to bring up, there was a young man at a skeptics gathering that has some very useful material on YouTube. I don't recall his name right now. You might, Erica. I think you first showed me the clips. But he did a presentation on some of Dr. Taylor's claims about giant football-shaped UFO under the rocks. And he was actually a qualified person in the industry of underground excavation and research and looking at things underground electronically, and was qualified to explain the type of equipment that was used and what it tells us and things like that. And he just thoroughly dismantled Dr. Taylor's assertions in his presentation. And I say I'm hesitant to even bring it up because we're almost buying into the absurdity to even debate it. Like it's not our position to pull out his claims and dissect them and show how none of it makes any sense to people that are actually qualified experts, and that it's a bunch of pseudoscientific babbling, arguably, pulls us into arguing about it at all, which in a manner of speaking sometimes gives it more credibility than it deserves in the first place,
right.
where it's his responsibility to prove something's in those rocks. It's not a geologist or an expert with state-of-the-art technology for underground objects to dissect these absurd claims.
Well, bringing your little Tonka trucks on the oh my god, on the set and roll. I mean, it's like this is like literally the best equipment that we have, with the most studied place on the planet. Millions and millions of dollars going into that. This is it, really? Wow.
And they brought out rocks. Gave Green Street a handful of rocks. Yeah, that's what they did. Yeah.
It's but I mean clearly there is, it's yeah, anyway. And Steve, I wanted to say, Steve's Aquatics, I see your questions and things, and I didn't stay in MUFON because I knew enough about the organization and knew that if I would stay in there, that would almost be a waste of my my talent, my resources. And I knew that if I could get away, it was distracting for me. I saw it for what it was, which is an organization that collects data, sells it to the highest bidder, and doesn't necessarily make any change after 50 plus years. Have never been any breakthroughs, right? We've got all this data. Why hasn't anything been done with it? Oh, well, because that's not really what's happening. But so I made the decision to leave because I knew what it was, and it was definitely hampering me as a researcher. So And then I also want to just say, Steve, again, great, nice questions. And I appreciate all of you in chat again, having thoughtful conversations and being respectful of each other. That's very cool. So the strange signal that was coming from the basin, what could that be coming from? Um, who knows? Again, I would say that any strange signal, and I don't know specifically what episode you're referring to, Steve, but I think you could go through every episode and then run it through an investigative process and find holes in every single claim they're making. If there were significant claims that they were making, and thank you, welcome to the show for the super sticker, but if there were claims that were of value that they were making, that would be something that would actually make news. That would be something that real scientists would want to dig into and be researching. But here you have a place where it is very closed off. You have to sign NDAs, you have to do all of these things, and they're not letting anybody but the people involved in the show do the research. That's a problem. If there is something real there, that should be your first, okay, this is all for show, right?
Right. And the YouTube presentation, or the presentation that's on YouTube, that the skeptic made, is very convincing. That in one instance, Taylor either was incredibly incompetent with reading the equipment that was used. In fact, this young man said that it just stretched credulousness. That he said it was very, very suspicious that someone could even be this ill-informed about what they were talking about. That was his opinion. I wouldn't really know, but I can tell the folks in chat, the folks listening, whatever, this. We conducted grammar requests, which are public records requests in Utah, with environmental agencies, their divisions of radiation, the counties that these people operate in, that Skinwalker's in, counties that they had contracts with, economic development contracts, and a pretty exhaustive process that we put all of the material we found and all of the people that we tapped for comment, which included Thomas Winterton. We put all of this on our blog site. And I'm really not interested anymore in anybody that wants to ask, what about this or that or the other? That's just a waste of time. It really is. What about he tells us what it is? How about that?
Well, he won't. And I think, and I've mentioned this on my show before, and I know we've got some questions here. And so, in the video actually that you're alluding to is a video that Louis Cayetano had sent to me, and so that was a really great video. And so hopefully he can post that in chat.
Please do.
That was
It's
good.
very well
Really
done.
good.
Yeah, it was a presentation at a conference that this gentleman did, and I don't recall his name without searching. And I'm afraid if I start clicking and doing things, I'll suddenly turn it off in the ether somewhere. So
Yeah,
please.
it's Lewis says the secret of Skinwalker Ranch debunked, and I think that's the one that I saw that he really did a good job. I'm not sure if that was at a conference or not, but that's a good video, and that does show you from a scientific perspective why all these questions should be asked, because the claims that are being made are completely fictitious. And I also want to say I remember one episode of the show there, looking underground at some of these things, and oh my God, it's a UFO. There's a UFO under the ground, and there are oil deposits under the ranch. So, I mean, what? I mean, the whole thing.
Right, and we got the division of what's it called? Is it DO or something like that? The Division of Economic, or the Division of Environmental.
DEQ.
Yeah, and the Division of Environmental Quality, their radiation department interacted with us, their air quality, their water quality, and the ranch personnel do not submit reports to them. They make all of these extreme claims, and the DEQ even shared with us information they had received from a federal radiation organization that Skinwalker Ranch personnel had apparently whipped the public into enough concern that someone submitted a letter of concern to a federal organization that thought Skinwalker Ranch should be checked for uranium. And both agencies told me that they were in no position to pursue it because it presumably would be natural uranium, and that they were not in contact with the owners or representatives of the ranch, had showed no concern about it, so they had no reason to pursue it. And we FOIA'd that and posted that on our blog, that they provided us with emails exchanged from the concerned citizen, as well as the federal and the Utah agency, and it's a complete waste of everyone's time and resources, again, including those that are paid by tax funds to sit around and forward these emails around.
Right. And yeah, at the end of the day, it's to me, and I think having been somebody that got caught up in all of this, and yes, it's an exciting story, when you're getting your feet wet in all of this, and you think, oh my goodness, there's a place, it's here in Utah, I can go there and see all of these things. And then you start stepping back and seeing that these puppet masters are really promoting information that, again, is just, it's outlandish. It can't be verified. After 30 plus years, none of that can be verified, which is just it's part and parcel for George Knapp and the absolutely outlandish claims he's made about Skinwalker Ranch, and also Bob Lazar and things over the years. There's definitely an agenda there with Mr. Peabody, but so I think that these are all important things to look at logically, and there are people that are making quite a good deal of money at around the ranch, at the ranch. And I know that Steve again mentioned, in the chat room, that if he could hear the Shermans say that there was nothing going on, then that would be proof to him. And I want to say the Shermans had to sign an NDA. And I would be willing to bet the Shermans probably had a little help. Maybe I'm going out on the thread here. Maybe they were strongly advised to keep their mouth shut. According to Junior Hicks, one of the statements he made was that they were behind, or they were in arrears on their mortgage, and that Bigelow knew that and then stepped in and potentially took advantage of that situation. It is interesting that the very few people that have actually spoken with them on the record, we've got Chris O'Brien, we've got Ryan Skinner, and then Linda Moulton Howe. And other than that, that's what we've got. And so I definitely would say with, Ryan Skinner and Linda Moulton Howe, I think I've got a great picture of that whole group at a meeting, and they're all standing around Bigelow, which I think is a really just lovely picture, lovely photo that could explain so much. But, again, if you are doing, I want to go back to the fact that here's this top secret place where we're getting government funding, and it's so top secret, we're writing a book about it. And we've got all these websites about it. And we're saying, hey, everybody, here's the GPS. Come on out here. Top secret. Yeah, pretty much you just don't do that. Same thing with the Jeremy Corbell crap. It's like, okay, leaked documents coming to Jeremy Corbell. Well, guess what? If he had leaked documents and he was putting those out to the public, don't you think there would be a little jail time there? It's pretty much illegal. So, I mean, let's step back and look at this from a realistic perspective. The whole thing is just asinine. So,
How about Gary Nolan drops that he and his associates, which we would, reasonably presume would at least include the circles of Kit Green, believed that there was a case of Havana syndrome at Skinwalker Ranch that involved a state or non-state actor, depending on which one of the two you ask. But as Billy Cox would say, how about you hang that out on the line and expect nobody to have any follow-up questions? How about that? But we really don't even have to get that far with it. We can just go back to I really empathize that not just Skinwalker Ranch, but a lot of these stories have a lot of pull to them and a lot of emotional pull, and they're interesting, and people can present things in really intriguing ways. And then, as writers and researchers, we not only have the right, but the responsibility to follow up on it and ask the right questions. And as the brilliant Sarah Scholes has said, seek information to substantiate or refute. Seek information to support or refute the claim. And it's not our responsibility to find out if the Shermans are lying. It's not the Shermans' responsibility to verify Travis Taylor's claims or Bob Bigelow's claims or anyone else's. It's Travis Taylor and Bob Bigelow's responsibility to give information available to the public for review that would adequately substantiate what they claim to know as fact. And everything else is just talk. And I get short and testy with it because we go over it and over it and over it, and it's what about. They're who you should be asking that, not me and Erica. What about asking Travis? What about that?
well, what about asking Fugel? What about asking some of these people? And it's like, I think there are, a handful of people that have been approached by certain people involved with the ranch, in the past and currently. And it's, they're, hey, we're good guys. We're great. You got to be our online bullies and, all of this stuff. And I mean, it's just like, okay, the whole thing is weird. You either have evidence, you're either conducting a scientific research project, and this is something that you share with other people. You're open and transparent about your data, or you're not, or you're making a TV show where you've got a bunch of guys in cowboy hats shining lights up on the mesa. And, I don't know. I mean, it's the more we step back and look at this, the more we should be actually not only just, we should laugh because it's a comedy to me. I mean, honestly, I watch it and I'm just like, are you really? Wow. But then we should be, I mean, we should hold people accountable, because you can't say, like, okay, this is listed as a science fiction show. This is fiction. That's the definition on history. And and then you have the quote unquote steward of the ranch, not sure if he's the owner, says like he is. And I was about to swear. Thanks for catching me. But you've got this person who is, I mean, whatever he's doing, but it's like, I don't know. I mean, the whole thing just seems, it's like watching The Wizard of Oz. It's just, it's hollow. There's no science. There is no accountability. There's no transparency. There is a concerted effort to make sure that people who are asking questions and speaking out about this to hold them accountable. There's definitely an online presence to kind of bully and intimidate people like that, and I think that's unfortunate. The whole thing's, I mean, I have invited multiple times, Brandon, come on my show again, because I would love to, and I think I will in the upcoming weeks, play the show that I did with Brandon when he was, in his living. I think it is in. Well, anyway, he was. That was a good show. You can go out there and find that. That was one of my podcasts. So definitely go out and listen to Erica Lukes and Brandon Fugel and Skinwalker Ranch. Listen to that very carefully because there's some good information in there.
When I interact with Brandon Fugel, one of the things that is fairly consistent is that he will suggest that he can produce something that then doesn't get produced. And this has happened more than once in my interactions with him. And it's one of the reasons I have just stopped asking him for comment unless it's something that he's directly involved in or might want to just state an opinion. Like we did tap him for the cryptocurrency blog post, and he chose to respond. But the last time before that I interacted with him that I recall, at least that I think went in a blog post, was he has a tendency periodically he'll get it in his sites to want to talk about this great these police documentation that he has about events at Skinwalker Ranch. And I did a blog post at the UFO Trail about this specific chain of events, in which I saw Brandon tweeting about that and asked him about it. And he said, sure, sure, we can talk about that. And he didn't give me any documentation of police interactions at Skinwalker Ranch. He told me to watch the show where one of his people interviewed a former sheriff, and which is some 25 years after the fact or whatever it is. And I reiterated in our exchange that I was hoping to get actual police records. And he gave me someone to get in touch with that he at least seemed to imply would have them. I mean, he was tweeting about this documentation, and they quickly told me that no, they had no police records.
And this was, can I say who this was?
They preferred to be left out of it after, which was really peculiar given that he had given me their contact information, and then they didn't want to be discussed.
Right. And then I think we can just generalize and say this is somebody that is on the show.
This is correct.
Okay.
And so then we went to of course, obviously the sheriff's office, and they don't keep records back that far. And not long after that, I saw him on Twitter again talking about having police, officers that say this and that and the other. And I suppose you could say a old man on a cable television show that's being interviewed in an arguably sensational fashion could be considered documentation. But I would also argue that it's also an advantageous way to use language and to imply things that um, are not entirely accurate and that would rather obviously suggest to people that more happened or is documented than what he tends to suggest. And as you drill down through circumstances, James Carrion has done a lot of that at his blog as well. This just happens again and again and again, that basically languaging is used that implies things that aren't entirely inaccurate, but could be worded much more accurately and specifically, that do imply greater circumstances than those of us that do the fact checking find to be the case. And that again is just going to keep coming back to, it's a complete and utter waste of time to hold anyone accountable other than the people making these claims. And they need to put up or shut up, and they're not, because they don't have anything.
I mean, obviously they really don't. I mean, if this is the best that they've got, then that I don't know what to say. A few blurry photos of alleged UFOs and some sort of dog with mange out in the pasture, or I mean, just different things. I mean, they've I mean, by Bigelow's and Fugel's own admission, this has been the most scientifically studied place in the history of the planet. And when you go out there and you see photos of what Bigelow had done, I can tell you there was minimal equipment at the ranch. There were cameras. Half of them were fake cameras that were just there to tour people that were going to come on the ranch. And from my, I believe this on an interview that I did with Eric Davis way back when, in one of my conversations, I mean, he specifically said that, Bigelow refused to let them have good equipment to go out to collect evidence at the ranch. And so, like, really, how much time did these people actually spend at the ranch? What equipment were they using? What came of that? Because it looked like, from what Tim McMillan kind of had a couple years ago, the big bombshell, quote unquote, where it's like, oh my gosh, we've got this I've seen the hidden Bigelow report from this time period, and there's 500 pages, and I've got 2 screenshots, and it's like, these are cases that other people investigated. One of the cases was a case that Barry, this was like directly a quote from Clear Intent. And that's what they've done with their investigations. They've swept up data, put this in a nice, pretty little bow, all the research everybody else has done. And this is supposed to be good. But then where's the information that they've been collecting? There isn't any. So, and even
Right. And it just happens again and again and again. And one of the things that this genre has to do is keep turning over its audience. It has to, there are people that have been at it for 30 years and adamantly believe that Steve Bassett is correct, that next week will be the big reveal, after he's been saying it for over 20 years. But there aren't a lot of them. It's much more common that people get pulled in, like with the December 2017 New York Times and Politico story about the ATIP, and then they start falling out as they get tired of following the drama that doesn't turn into anything substantial, certainly not to the extent they feel they were led to believe when they jumped on board. And so those of us that have been at it a while, I certainly am somewhat cynical about it. I've gotten much more selective, and I don't really care about hearsay. I don't really care about statements that end with question marks. I just want to, see the information, see the data, um, show us what you got, make it available for public review. It doesn't matter if someone has credentials or not. That's not what's important. What's important is that they show their work and that it justifies the statements they're saying. And so I understand that people can come along and like catch the most recent season, or really didn't even know about Skinwalker Ranch maybe until 2016, 2018, something like that. And it can seem pretty exciting. And then other people like Erica that have run that gamut and have been through all the emotions of it, and disappointment after disappointment, and again and again and again led down some garden path that turns into the same people over and over and over, that suggests something's coming, but then it never quite makes it. Understandably, they just drop their head on the desk when they hear somebody say, "Hey, guess what? There's a really good episode out next week," and it's just like, oh, for crying out loud.
Well, I think it is interesting because I'm seeing some of the comments in chat, and it's like, yes, a certain person reached out to us and has been DMing us on Twitter, or, spending time. I know that after a couple of the shows that we've done, this specific person went in and found other people he could send Twitter messages to, and they were very caustic and things. And I think if you really are what you say you are, and you're a billionaire, and you've got all of these things going on here and there, why in the world would you spend that much time talking to a handful of people? It doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. And I know, as good as that could make everybody feel, I mean, I remember, being kind of pulled into this, and then, oh my gosh, I'm talking to Eric Davis, or I'm talking to, this person, and they've got this illusion of, we're bringing you into these top secret things. And then you sit there and you listen to what they're saying, and you just go, wow, this is really kind of dumb. And I'm glad I've had, those experiences, and I'm glad I've been able to eventually just like step back. And I'm also very, very glad that I have kept meticulous notes. And I probably have, oh my gosh, maybe 10 at least banker boxes full of my notes from Chris Bledsoe, from Eric Davis, from, all of these people that have come into my life over the years and tried to fill me full of specific narrative. And luckily, I've had as much fun as it's been to go down that rabbit hole. Luckily, I've had the intelligence to step back and say, wait a minute, this doesn't add up. I can go back to this date and this date and this date, put it all together, and yeah, not making sense.
Well, one of the things that I've written about before, and Vanessa was talking about with Invisible Night School this week, and they referenced her conversation with you, Erica, that you two were talking about as well, is that the reported experiences people have from what we might call high strangeness, or even extreme high strangeness, just bizarre things, to even your more garden variety lights in the sky UFOs, uh, are pretty universally described as traumatic, or oftentimes they are described as traumatic. As we get into the more dramatic reports, certainly they are. They're often accompanied by reports of becoming physically ill after the event, nauseous, tired for a few days, things like this. And so one of the points that it's some of us, Invisible Night School, that this show and Pan Paracon and some other is, why are we not encouraging people to get treatment for trauma regardless of what the origin of the experience is? Because they're clearly traumatized. The symptoms are going to be there, which are detrimental to quality of life, are detrimental to accuracy of reporting later. I mean, just alone, the extent trauma can be detrimental in one's life, the symptoms of emotional trauma, we should be prioritizing and making it safe and acceptable for people to seek qualified treatment from qualified professionals. And to kind of throw back to last Friday's discussion about Bud Hopkins and what I used to back in the day call the witch hunt gang, his entourage of hypnotists and people that advocated hypnosis and advocated alien abduction, they would often try to kind of blur that line between what the nature of the relationship is. And in my opinion, it was done for self-promoting and self-interest reasons. They would just be friends when that was advantageous. They would take the role, and I mean specifically like Bud Hopkins, David Jacobs, John Carpenter, would take the roles of a therapist when they found it advantageous to do so, and some type of therapeutic, helping them with the emotional damage of these experiences. Other times they would take the role as an investigator when they found it advantageous to do so. And all of that in itself could be considered extremely ethically questionable, that in itself. Bud Hopkins had no experience, no formal training to the best of my knowledge, and I think I'd know by this point, in treating trauma or hypnosis or anything else. But he did play one on television, as they say. And I mean, that's just something we should be talking about more. If you're traumatized, then go get professional treatment. Don't go to MUFON. I mean, I don't know how to be more blunt about it.
That would be helpful, and that's a very sage advice. And last week you mentioned that Hopkins had warnings from a certain person's doctors that this was a situation that could affect that person's mental health, and yet he still went ahead and promoted this. And can you elaborate a little bit on that?
I sure can. You can all read about Carol Rainey's documentation of it in a piece that she brilliantly called "The Priests of High Strangeness: Co-Creation of the Alien Abduction Phenomenon." So if you use your favorite search engine and look for "Priests of High Strangeness" PDF, you should be able to locate it. She was known in his circles, I believe, as the Dora case. I believe Dora was the pseudonym that he gave her. And yes, she Carol found correspondence from doctors of hers about the extent of her trauma, letters to Bud that stated that it was not advisable that this narrative be enabled. I'm paraphrasing here, but that she was severely abused in a series of relationships since childhood and throughout her life. And he continued anyway with the narrative. And one of the things too that I should point out that happens repeatedly with these core people I'm talking about, Hopkins, Jacobs, Carpenter, and then it kind of trickled out to some others to the extent I don't know that some of the females did it, or that others in more regional MUFON groups would do it and whatnot. I know a lot of that went on, hypnosis. I've been at a MUFON regional meeting where the group was encouraged to be collectively hypnotized by the facilitator in order to help them recall memories of experiences. So a lot of that went on, but my point in this context is when Bud and Dave Jacobs would kind of paint themselves in corners, as will happen with these stories, sometimes it appeared to become most advantageous to just drop the person. And there is, and that is like extremely ethically unsound, unethical. That for in the case of Emma Woods, for instance, this was a long distance over the phone hypnosis relationship that Emma had no support in real life or follow-up ability if 6 hours from now, 24 hours, 2 days, she was in some type of emotional crisis. And I just bring her up because that was typical from my understanding, that when they get the story, when the book's written, and now the individual might be, okay, well, I mean, we've got all these hybrids bearing down on me, and this is going on and that's going on, and I'm raising 18 hybrid children that they take me to the craft once a week and I'm helping, and these guys just stop answering their phone, at that point. And there is a two-part blog post on the UFO Trail written by Carol Rainey that I highly recommend people read. Carol posted it at the UFO Trail a few years ago, and I believe the title of it is The Singer's Hybrid Daughter. And this is a case where what initially alerted Carol, one of the things that initially alerted to her that something might be not best practices, to put it mildly, was that she and Bud ran into this woman in a restaurant, and Carol somewhat seemed to perceive that the woman was not entirely pleased that Bud had not been in touch. I'll just put it that way. And so they started up interacting again, and Carol got to digging around in the studio and pulling out the old recordings and whatnot and looking at them, and discovered that this woman had an extremely handicapped child that the subject, the female that Bud and the woman came to suggest that she was some type of abductee and breeder, or whatever the current terminology they're using is. They manufactured the idea that the aliens were responsible for this child being handicapped, and that maybe they were helping it, maybe they had heard it, whatever. And the woman, understandably, seemed to be rather emotionally distraught in a number of ways about this. And this is one of the circumstances I'm alluding to that, well, then Bud's kind of painted in a corner. I mean, what the hell is he supposed to do about that? I mean, I guess you could start doing third-party testing. I don't know, but anyway, it shouldn't be difficult to envision the dilemma there, that he had certainly had a role in co-creating, if not outright did create. And then, found it more advantageous not to be in touch with the woman than not. So again, I'm kind of also illustrating here how they will blur those roles of what the nature of the relationship is, as they find it advantageous to do so. And I could just go on and on with instances like that.
I mean, to me, the whole thing is absolutely amazing. And to go back, and in Vancouver, guy just brought up the episode that Mark Pilkington was on, and saying that there should be a mental health booth at a UFO conference, and preferably, they're not aligned to the UFO topic. And I can't stress that enough. I think if anybody feels that they've had an experience, and I know that there are many people who feel that this is very real and this has profoundly affected their life, I would definitely suggest seeking help from a mental health expert that has nothing to do with anybody in the UFO field, because I can tell you from personal experience and from knowing some of these people, they all have an agenda, and the agenda is they are going to hypnotize you and tell you that you are a special person who is a hybrid, who is, has all of these things that are going on, and that's not necessarily, none of that can be verified, none of it's true. It's a narrative they're telling people who are vulnerable, and to me, that is the most despicable thing that I could think of, to take advantage of people who are in a situation like that. And even if you don't have even if you don't have trauma or things like that you're dealing with, the fact that you are trying to explore things, the fact that you're trying to find like-minded people, where you want to look up at the sky and you want to do research and you want to understand, is there something out there? Is there something here? And to immediately get swept up into groups like MUFON, or to go to certain Facebook pages where you're just pushed, and then the admins are people you don't even know. Are they real people? Probably not, but they'll communicate with you. They'll mine your data. They're going to steer the direction that you're going. And these things are very detrimental. And I can't, honestly, I can honestly say that if you've had an experience, do not turn to social media. Do not turn to social media. Keep it to yourself, and find people around you that you can talk to. And I feel very, very strongly about that.
I'm an advocate of mental health services as well, and I understand that it takes a lot of courage to pick up that 10,000-pound phone and reach out to a counselor, and then It's hard to interview them because you, I'm in distress if I'm calling a counselor, so I don't feel like getting three quotes like I'm looking for a new roof or something and asking them, what kind of work they do. So I'm likely to just take the first appointment I get. A lot of excuses get made, but there's places that'll work with you sliding scale. You can always stop. You don't like the counselor, it doesn't work for you. Well, you used them 2 or 3 times and got enough courage to call another one. That'll help. Um, Really, I guess what it comes down to is when we get in enough pain that the pain outweighs the fear of sharing our stories and talking to people and facing that fear. And I'm a real advocate of doing that. Um, there's just a lot of bad stuff going on in the UFO community that exploits people that would be much better served, possibly in many instances, with therapists or 12-step groups, some kind of support system, as compared to enabling um, just tail chasing that just perpetuates more trauma, really, and
Right.
and and makes us more exposed to predators as well.
Right, absolutely. I think that the UFO field is, you bring up a great point. I think it is so full of predators that it is just absolutely unbelievable. And the fact that you can have people that we have known, have spoken at conferences time and time again, who have had criminal records for things that are really bad, and yet here they are, we're giving them a pass. Even with Jan Harzan, I think the interesting thing is, he was involved, the executive director of MUFON was involved in a sting where he was soliciting underage girls online. And it was very interesting. You can't find a peep out about that now, but it was very interesting to hear the people that were involved with MUFON at the time step up in the first few days to talk about, well, he was one day away from disclosing information. Okay, really? Been there for
Oh
how
my
many
God,
decades?
that's like, I mean that's like I'd walk out of the movie ridiculous,
I mean, it was, but it was sad. It's like, okay, seriously, at what point do we not have, a foot in reality? That we're, okay, this guy's been working with this organization for how long? 50 years. I mean, not 50 years. He'd been there for decades, but nothing's ever come to fruition with any of these organizations. And yet the guy got framed because he was on the verge of disclosure. No, maybe he got framed because he was actually involved in this. And there have been, there are a handful, well, I mean, there are more than a handful of examples of people who have, served time and have, done some pretty despicable things that are welcomed with open arms into the UFO lecture circuit. So, what does that say about A, the conference organizers, and B, the people that pay the tickets to go see these speakers?
Yeah, there's a certain underlying theme that everything's okay in the pursuit of promoting flying saucer lore. That's a very dangerous stance to have. I mean that pretty much is cultism defined. Um, I mean, I don't even know what to say other than that. When you become involved in something that no dissent is allowed and the leaders can do no wrong as long as they'll keep telling you what you want to hear, that those are very dangerous circumstances to be in. And there were some people that went against the grain with Bud Hopkins and Dave.
Well, Jack just froze. That could just be me. I'm not sure. But anyway, yeah, Jack has frozen. So hopefully he can unfreeze and then get back into the show. So anyway, yeah, we were talking about David Jacobs and some of the people involved in the abduction scene. And I want to just say that, Jack, I'm just going to remove you. So get out of the show. Get out of the show. Come back in. Whatever. When you get a good stream going. And I want to go over some of the comments, and I really appreciate that. Michael Reynolds, I love hearing your comments, and they are really, really great. And Lewis and Steve Long and Sheldon. Sheldon has made some great comments as well. And so this is what Sheldon said a few minutes back. Hearing Bud Hopkins brought up makes me think of something. Why does no one ever discuss the fact that Leslie Kean was involved with him up until his death, and she's supposed to be objective? And that is a very interesting comment. Again, you see people that are promoting specific narratives, aka the 2017 bombshell at the New York Times, and they're involved with the same people over and over again promoting the same narratives. And yet, really, here we are, 2017, here we are, 2023. There are very few, well, actually, we haven't seen any tangible evidence of anything. And so, Drew, you're frozen there too. Dang it. And Jack was about to tell the real truth about UFOs. They had to freeze him. The men in black. They're so rude. So hopefully Jack will get back in. Who knows what's going to happen. And if any of you guys want to, and I'm going to invite you, copy the link, and then invite you to come on the show and ask questions. So here you go, hopefully. Here is the StreamYard. So if you want to get in there, hopefully that's the right link. Nobody knows. Definitely get in there and ask some questions, or just in chat, ask questions. But yes, I think, and thank you, Vancouver guy. You've, again, made some really great comments tonight. And as far as Leslie Kean and, okay, she's been involved with specific things. I know she was involved with the Chilean government and NARCAP and some of their reports. And so again, you've got a handful of people all involved with Bigelow, all involved with the same narrative, and they've created kind of a cottage industry, and they've done quite well. And again, they can keep saying, well, we're close to disclosure. Well, we're close to saying UFOs are here. And then they can turn around and say, wait a minute, it's actually not UFOs. This is ultra-terrestrial. This is, it's a ghost, or this is our, near-death experience. I mean, they keep moving the game. When something gets too uncomfortable because there's no data to promote their claims, then we're going to move it over here and over there. And it's really, really fascinating to me. And it does go back, Simon, to the same characters. It has been since the 70s, right? The 60s, the same characters. Put off Russell Targ back there in the background. You've got, then the new Eric Davis, Bigelow, some of these people, Andre Puharich. My gosh, there's so many people that have been involved in this. Stanford, really heavy hitters in regard to all of that. They still have some pretty interesting things. And then Amy is saying, make a new communist themed disclosure based on the Soviet era joke. Disclosures on the horizon. That's kind of funny. But yeah, so I don't think any information is available, and I would like to find that out about what Jan Harzan had to go through in the legal process that should be out there, I would imagine, if somebody did some digging on that. But as we know, when that broke in the news for a brief moment before it was kind of hushed in the UFO community, there was a definite definite push to, obviously we've got Dave McDonald now, who's the new old executive director. Dave McDonald, if you don't know much about him, he's an airline pilot and owns Flamingo Air. And if you go read and research Dave McDonald and Flamingo Air, you can learn a little bit about Flamingo Air. He's quoted in an article, I believe it's in Vice, but don't quote me on that. You can do your own research, where he is talking about taking people up it's the 9-mile club. So you can take people up for rides. He talks about taking people and their animals up for rides and closing the curtains, or taking kids on their first rides. And in and of itself, some of these comments at face value are pretty unsettling. And so you can, again, that's a matter of public record, go out there and look at that online. And this is what's taking place at MUFON, and yet nobody's asking any questions. It is absolutely crazy. So, and then, Vancouver guy was going to ask some MUFON board people if they've heard of anything about Jan. You should do that, definitely. And the Mile High Club, I mean, clearly great. And sex on planes is his business, and it's these great Christians. I don't know. It's great. So here you go. Jack is back.
Jack is back. Name of the new band.
That is true.
I'm so sorry. I'm my apologies.
No worries. So, all right.
I think I was saying that back with that abduction bunch, some of the women then went against the grain, and I was saying that like I'm talking to someone now that went against the popular opinion of Bob Bigelow's support and Skinwalker Ranch. And when people go against that, up against that, because it is such a cult environment, they know that they're going to get a lot of mud thrown at them. And they know it's going to come in a lot of different forms. And that we do have an environment that is unhealthy and cult-like, and that it supports anything that any type of advocacy for the narrative, for the pro-UFO, pro-alien narrative. And so when people question that, it's very much like questioning the leaders of a cult. I would argue it is. And I should probably throw in my disclaimer that this doesn't by any means indicate that no one ever has any experiences or sees any phenomena outside the normal range of known and accepted events. It maybe they do. I'm sure there is a lot to be better understood about the earth and the universe and what all is going on in it. But blindly following people that are repeatedly shown to be unreliable narrators and massaging language to the extent they would like, and are mixing financial investments with suggestions that otherworldly beings are regularly navigating the skies is a really poor substitute for an active mental health program.
Right, absolutely. And then just to see some of these people in the way, even Avi Loeb and all of that stuff is coming to light with cryptocurrency, and some of these things are definitely blowing up in a lot of areas. So, and hey, Tracy, nice to see you. But yeah, I mean, what are your suggestions for really digging into the history of the subject. Not only that, but people like, Mr. Earth Day, the founder of Earth Day, who has been hailed a hero by many people in the UFO community, but actually committed murder, abused his girlfriend, and then went on the lam for many years. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know that you have specifically dealt with that and done research on this person on the UFO trail.
Yes, you're talking about Einhorn, right?
Right.
Yes, Einhorn. He was a environmental activist. I honestly don't know enough about him to know if he was sincerely interested in the paranormal and UFOs, or if he found it as a welcoming community. If he said the things that they wanted to hear, I really don't know, but he got rather popular in each, and he's rather frequently in Valet's diaries. He makes appearances, and if I recall correctly, Valet even wrote favorably about him. And when Valet first began to hear accusations about a potential murder of Einhorn's girlfriend, Valet, if I recall correctly, was of the impression this was some kind of smear campaign or something. But because Einhorn had a following among the environmental people and the UFO believers, when his girlfriend went missing and was eventually found stuffed in a trunk in his home, I believe it was, he headed to Europe and had people actually putting him up and helping harbor him. And there are now hundreds of UFO file or FBI files on the case and the pursuit, and his eventual capture and brought to the United States, where he was convicted of the crime, and I believe he died in prison, if I recall correctly. And it is not unusual that people that have some popularity in any industry will then be found to be at least accused of less than their following made them out to be. And that's certainly the case in the UFO subculture. And those circumstances are still happening, and they're going to continue to happen. And it's going to sting more when we put people on pedestals that uh, they're not shown to be worthy of. Again, I can empathize. We really want saviors sometimes. We really want to drink the Kool-Aid. There's some politicians that have been really good at being who their followings want to hear, presenting themselves as who the public needs, who they need to believe in. I heard a anecdote one time about a evangelist that went on to become wealthy and famous, that someone that he went to college with claimed that one time they got some beer and went to a tent revival and were watching from the outside, and that the man that went on to be millionaire television evangelist said to his friend, "I'm going to make a fortune at that." That he was just watching and drinking beer and said, "I can do that, man. I can do that." And it every case is going to stand alone as to how much someone hurt the people that believed in them or helped them by giving them who they wanted to believe in. Einhorn's girlfriend would certainly argue that she wasn't helped much. Uh, but, every circumstance is going to stand alone. And I think you would agree with me, Erica, that the people willing to tell those stories have a place at the table. They need to have their voice heard. If someone's wife has something she wants to say that feels like everybody's misrepresenting who her deceased husband was,
Right.
I think she has a right to be heard and not treated like Carol Rainey was when she gave us documented information that uh, is. And again, I was talking earlier about how some of us just get really cynical about seeing the same logical fallacies and circular arguments again and again. We've seen this movie before where the critical points are never addressed. They just try to smear the writer or the filmmaker.
Right.
And they won't address the discrepancy. They'll just say, oh, that's just debunking. They're just part of the cover up. And we've seen this movie again and again and again. And Romanek comes to mind. On his way to prison, I was in communication with local writers and reporters there in Loveland, Colorado, that were covering the city council meetings because he had a following that was going to the city council meetings.
And let's back this up, because I think people that aren't familiar with, like we are, who is Stan Romanek? What happened with that?
Stan Romanek was a Colorado man that had a series of fantastic stories that were lacking in evidence. And he had a tendency to kind of shoot himself in the foot as well. He was always trying to up his last story and would just make it worse. He would make it worse. That it became increasingly apparent he was at best an unreliable narrator. And he would do things like claim that his hotel room had been ransacked, or that there was a bomb threat at the conference to keep him from speaking. But then it's like easy to check that the hotel people and the police department say they received no such reports. And then it would get worse from there. For instance, he one time was interviewed on video like this, and he can be visibly seen like throwing things around and then pretending that he doesn't know, going, what was that? And I'll see that I just live with this. And then when like there was just no way possible to claim he didn't throw it, he offered the story that he had been threatened by the powers that be, that if he didn't make a fool of himself for plausible deniability, that his family would be harmed.
Okay.
And then he had the infamous video of the gray looking in the window.
Oh, that's one of the best, like that little gray.
Yeah, the head that comes up over the window. And then while all of this is going on, he gets busted for child porn on his computer.
Yep.
And the Loveland Police Department was tipped off by the Homeland Security, which, yes, if you're wondering, that is common in how it works, that um, DHS will conduct operations, and when they see unusual computer activity, they will alert the local authorities if it's not something they were directly working
Right.
on. And so then Romanek claimed he was set up, that it's all, and I got those police records and actually found one, dark as it is, somewhat amusing, that the detective wrote in his report that when he arrived with the warrant to confiscate the computers and search the premises, that Romanek told him, this is happening because I have important UFO documents in my possession. And what I thought was kind of amusing was the detective told him, well, no worries, because I'm not here for UFO documents. Well, then no problem. That's not what's on my warrant. And then Romanek claimed that he was jumped by the police for calling them out for trying to frame him. And I got those police reports, and the detective cited several police officers and other detectives in their investigations and trying to get neighbors that saw anything happen. And they concluded that it was a staged crime scene and he had not actually been attacked. And of course, people are going to go, aha, well, of course, that's what they'd say. And that's just all part of the narrative that's always going to bring us back to the burden is on the claimant. And so while all of this is going on, I'm getting these police reports and I'm corresponding with the reporters there in Loveland that are covering the court cases and in touch with the detectives and know the local beat. And Romanek regularly had an entourage going to city council meetings, like the city council could do something about UFO disclosure. It was just the most bizarre stuff. And he went to prison, and not entirely surprisingly, part of his narrative was hybrid children that were somehow, in the fray. Rather nauseating to even think about, frankly. And he went to prison. And last I heard, I think he had been released and was had to stay in some type of supervised residence. I don't know if he's still at a halfway house or not. And part of his parole was that he could not be on the internet, is my understanding. And
Wow.
that's kind of where I lost the trail.
And that just is, when you look back at these, Jan Harzan, you look back at Romanek, you look back at Wendell Stevens, you look back at some of these people who have been allowed to, or even there was a fellow, and I cannot remember his name, but Elaine Douglas was very big in her little group of promoting him, and he was involved in some pretty nefarious stuff back, oh my gosh, maybe back in the 80s, and they tried to get this person off. And it is just like, oh my gosh. And the whole thing was UFOs. Oh, we're being framed. And I understand that they're actually, I understand that there are things that need to be looked at in the judicial system, as far as police investigations, the FBI. I mean, that people are people. There are things that need to be investigated, but it is really sad when the UFO community kind of uses that as a catch-all when somebody is literally a predator to get them off. And then you've got to like kind of turn back and say, hey, wait a minute, you're the conference owner and you're promoting this person. How many times has this guy spoken at your conference? How many times have you promoted somebody who is has been charged with pedophilia? I mean, we talk about QAnon and some of the things that are going on in the child sex trafficking, which is very important and very real. But then you look at the ways the UFO community has allowed people like that to make money and prosper, and you say, "Wait a minute, what's the game here?"
Yeah, these are really good points, Erica. It's kind of like citing MK Ultra for every conspiracy that you want to float. That's just a logical fallacy, and um, I am not. I am neither a law enforcement flag waver nor outspoken critic. I think it's obvious a lot of reform needs to be done, and I also think that they have tremendously difficult
Right.
jobs. That the to even have a position as a police officer or a detective pretty much should qualify someone for uh, being in some kind of ongoing active mental health maintenance program. Uh, I mean, talk about getting cynical about what you see regularly. And for instance, in that Stan Romanek case, when I had requested the records uh, about him supposedly being jumped by the police, I was told on a Friday that it was an active investigation and that the records weren't available. The following Monday, I received an email from the same uh, officer telling me that the detective on the case went ahead and closed it,
Mm-hmm.
and so attached are the records. And what I interpreted that to indicate was when the detective heard someone was asking for the records, he went ahead and closed it and told the officer, give them the records. And I interpret that may have been because they're sick of people like Romanek. And they wanted it to be known that this guy is just staging crime scenes, and we ain't got enough to do in Loveland that I need to get up in the winter in Colorado and go to a supposed crime scene at night, and it's just bullshit. And I think he was sick of him. Is why they said to release the records, and that's a hunch, but I think correct or not, I think that the point is valid that um they get really sick of people just trying to game the system, and that don't even mind taking their time pulling them away from dinner. I mean, no telling what that detective was doing that night that he needed to go out then in the Colorado winter and start forensically examining Romanek's staged crime scene. And that circles back to the emails between the Utah Department of Environmental Quality and the Federal Radiation Commission, that just wasting their time with these absurd skinwalker stories that have to be followed up on, and emails have to be done, and they have to circle back and follow up on it again. And did you get that? And DEQ is writing back to the feds, what is it you even want us to do about this? this? So somebody says there might be uranium somewhere. What are we even supposed to do about this? And it's understandable how they just get really tired of people trying to game the system. Yet, of course, a tremendous amount of reform needs to be done. And certainly, victims don't need a second assault, as we were discussing earlier, when they decide to try to uh, do things properly through that system.
I think that and it, like I said, there are good people everywhere, and at the police department and the FBI and the CIA, and it's and so I don't, like, from my personal experiences, I've always said with regard to the police department, and I've always been very forthright. I know you guys have a hard job. I understand that. I understand that you have families and you're putting your life at risk, to do the things that you need to do. With that said, I have specifically seen and witnessed and documented the fact that they have not taken people's personal safety seriously, and not just mine, but other people. And so there have to be, like I said, there are people that just get sick of things. And I'm sure if you're in law enforcement, you see things come in like Stan Romanek, and it's like, oh my God, this is, what an idiot, and he's wasting our time. And there are people that do that have mental illness, that are narcissists, that might like to, get attention, and they are using a system to get glorification, whatever. But with that said, when I look at the many women specifically here in Utah who have been murdered, that have gone to the police, that have their families have gone to the police. There was a couple months back, there was a woman who had gone to the police about domestic abuse, and her boyfriend lured her to a storage unit and lit the storage unit on fire and killed both her and her dog.
I recall that.
Yeah, and then you look at the Gabby Petito case, and you look at all these cases of, you can go back and just look at domestic abuse in Utah, and you look at the failures of law enforcement. And there are many props that we can give law enforcement. Of course, they've got tough jobs, and they're getting paid. They should have adequate counseling to help them endure the stresses that they're enduring. And so, but at the same time, where do you give somebody the leeway to put your life in danger continually, or to put the public's life in danger continually, when they're getting paid? I don't know. These are like questions that I have personally, because of what I have seen and documented, and I understand, yeah, Romanek, okay, put that to bed, because the guy's completely full of crap. But
there's a saying in baseball about the umpires, that I'm going to use kind of a metaphor of the umpires being like, the police authority figures here, where they say, just call the game consistent. If you're going to call it a strike below the knees in the second inning, then do it for us in the eighth inning too. And I think we see a lot of problems with that, with law enforcement, that it's not distributed uniformly. And I'm not even talking about the court system. We know that. We don't even have to speculate about that there are different demographics that get it much harder in court rulings than others. But just in the police interactions on the street, that laws are not enforced uniformly among different people and different demographics and in different sections and all of that. And you do want to see the game called consistently.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Square one. Yeah.
Well, and that goes back to, again, like, leadership, effective leadership that goes, I mean, training. And I think the one thing that's really interesting is law enforcement training isn't consistent. They're not getting the same types of trainings. And so you've got like the Salt Lake City Police Department who's getting funding to get training from who knows who over here, and then it's not the same training that necessarily another police department in Utah would have access to. And so I think there needs to be some consistency with that. And I'm sorry to go off on on this, but anyway, it just kind of goes full circle to talk about some of the things in the UFO community and the fact that we let things slide when we as individuals we should have the foresight to ask questions, and then to also look to authority figures, aka people that are they're holding conferences, people that are promoting specific speakers on their shows, people that are holding people up as an idol, and these are people that have records of abusing other people. And Lazar, I'm hearing a lot of chat in Lazar um, tonight, and so I think that Lazar is a prime example of somebody who should not be held on a pedestal, but is continually held on a pedestal, you know?
Yeah, and I'll duck, all the NICAP fans when I say this, but I feel like Donald Kehoe from NICAP's enduring legacy was that he managed to give other people responsibility to prove his claims. And we're just going to keep coming back to that, that it's nobody's responsibility to prove Lazar didn't do anything. It's his responsibility to prove he did. He hasn't. There's nowhere else to go with that, as far as I'm concerned. I don't care about where he lived in 79, what he did in 92. I don't care. He hasn't done what he said. He hasn't proven what he claims he did.
Right.
And when an Edward Snowden jumps ship, he brings the thumb drive with him. And I mean, it's just so stupid that it like elevates it to status it doesn't deserve by even debating it with people at this point, in my opinion. But I understand why it gets discussed and why people do. And by the way, I don't think you're wandering off at all with the discussion about um, the hierarchy in society. Um, I mean, it's very important what's going to happen with this police state that repeatedly gets hand me downs from the military, and I mean is we've got an American police state that's armed more than many countries are, and we've got problems in the FBI about do they even align with the president of the United States ideologies and interpretation of the Constitution? And I don't think there's a whole lot more important to talk about than how that translates community by community, whether it's Salt Lake, Orlando, hometown USA. Um, what is being done about levels of corruption and tyranny and dog eat dog mentalities? We just had police officers arrested here in Florida that had been working on a DEA, a drug enforcement task force, and they're drug dealers, and that's what they were doing with their confiscated money and drugs. And one's an addict that was getting, I can't even remember how many prescriptions a week that I'd imagine those were colorful conversations he was having with doctors to get those prescriptions. And I mean, these are very important societal ills.
They are, and it takes a lot of work to look at this, and it's been, unfortunately, it's been so weaponized, just to use Corbell's little statement. And if you look at some of the people politically are using weaponize, I think that's pretty telling. But, we have to be smart enough as consumers of what we're reading and watching on social media and on the internet. We have to be smart enough to know that there are things, Cambridge Analytica, please look that up. Please do research on that and find out the ways that these companies could go in and figure out what makes you tick and then give you information that would lead you down a rabbit hole to make you angry, to separate you from your friends and your family. I mean, this is very real. This happened. This is happening. And I think we've got to be on our game with regard to this. And I'm really excited to actually have Dave Troy on the show next Friday. This is going to be a pre-recorded interview, but Dave Troy will be on, and he is an expert in misinformation, disinformation, and technology. And so that will be really powerful. In the meantime, if you're listening to the show tonight, definitely go to YouTube and watch some of his TEDx talks. Dave Troy, read his articles. He mentions specifically people like Peter Thiel, who we know, and Jack, you and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but Peter Thiel has been involved on the periphery of the UFO community and has used his group, his people like Eric Weinstein and things like that, to get in there with Hal Puthoff and throw things out there, Diana Pasulka, yada, yada, yada. So there is this bigger picture of people that have huge empires that mine data, that want to have a specific outcome that doesn't necessarily play well for people like you and I. And so I think this is going to
Yeah.
be a very important interview.
Yes, I very much look forward to watching your and David Troy's discussion. Uh, he's quite informed on the use of UFO topic as a vehicle for financial reasons, for power reasons, for political reasons. And readers may recall that he contributed comment to Erica and my recent article on cryptocurrency and UFO world. And I'm really looking forward to that discussion. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I am too. I think this is really great. And again, I want to thank everybody that have listened to UFO Classified for years and years, and now you're still hanging in there with Expanding Frontiers. I am diversifying what I want to talk about, because as I've looked into the UFO subculture, I have found there are many threads here underlying a lot of things, and all of us should be concerned about this. We should be educated about this. This just isn't a simple thing. This is something that has an effect on all of us, that has an effect on society, that has an effect on democracy, and I feel very strongly about that. And so I'm really excited to have future shows and to have Jack Troy on next week. So, or Dave Troy. See, I'm confusing the two of you.
I knew what you meant.
Well, that's good. And so, yeah, anyway, thank you for your great comments tonight, you guys. You're awesome. I have to say that, well, I've got the show with Dave next week, but I'm not sure how long I'm going to be interviewing him. I know he's like got limited time frame, but I might have to do a little bit after that interview celebrating my birthday, because my birthday's coming up.
Happy birthday.
And nobody's ever going to know what birthday it is. At least if you do, just, lie to me and pretend like it's not happening. But anyway, so thank you, Jack, and everybody can get
Let me give a quick shout
yeah.
out, please. I see people being very supportive in chat, and Amy, Simon, all of you guys, we really appreciate you. Luis, thanks for being here. Shout out to Lord Ludacris. I will see you tomorrow. He and I are going to be watching March Madness, Tennessee
Woo.
and Duke. Yeah, going to be a big matchup there. And so we got to go see what happened to Utah State now.
Well, this will be fun. I'm excited to, again, the University of Utah women's basketball team. That's going to be fun. I'm rooting for them. And so thanks for the sports updates, you guys. I appreciate that. And Drew and Lord, Ludacris, have fun with Jack tomorrow, and Pickles. 37. Yes, 37. Forever 29. I think these are good things. So, yeah, but anyway, I love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting me, my work. Thanks for supporting Expanding Frontiers research. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Mario, for doing things behind the scenes to make sure that the information is preserved and that it is getting out on social media. If any of you want to touch base with us at expandingfrontiersresearch.org to volunteer any, maybe perhaps like posting on social media or doing things to help everything along, that would be great. We are operating on kind of a very slim budget, well, no budget, and we're also operating with just a handful of wonderful people, and we could use the help. For me personally, I believe that the research that we are doing is incredibly important, not only to expose specific things in the UFO world, but to also address things that are going on in our communities, certain environmental issues, things that impact all of us. And so definitely get in, support. Thanks for coming to the show. And I will have birthday updates and a little birthday show next week. So thank you, Jack.
Have a wonderful birthday,
Yeah,
Erica.
absolutely. I will. I'm sure I'll be talking to you a million times before then. But anyway, thanks, Michael, and to everybody, Daniel. So you guys take care, and we will catch you next week. Now, if I could play the outro, it would be a miracle.